Hello, Dirty Girls, and welcome to another fabulous Training Tuesday. I am very happy to be here with you tonight, and we are in week three of our Boss Energy series. Tonight's a good one because tonight is all about the mindset, and the mindset is where all the things get kind of kludgy and they block us and they stop us and they have us running circles in our head. So tonight, sorry, I'm checking my notes. Tonight we're going to talk about the mindset, mastering the mindset. All right, so here's the thing. In week one, we talked about your values and how important it is to understand what's important to you and how you're making your choices and your decisions. In week two, we talked about your sense of purpose, and we approached it from a unusual angle, right? But I think the most important angle, which is know yourself. If you know yourself, you can define your purpose. So week three, we are going to talk about what ails you, the mindset, mastering the mindset. So, hey, look who's here. It's Katarina and Christine. Good evening, ladies. It's lovely to see you. Thank you for joining. So tonight we're going to ask, what ails you? What ails you? AIL is the acronym for assumptions, interpretations, and limiting beliefs. Those are your AILs. These are the AILs that your gremlin, your imposter mindset, likes to throw out and create little bumps in the road. These completely mess with any boss energy that you've got going on. All right, these things do. So we're going to talk tonight about why that is and how we raise our self-awareness around the what they are and the what we can do to master these little bumps in the road and bring us back to a place where we're making choices and moving forward with confidence and with power and not with these ails in the back of our head. So here's what you need to remember. The ails, assumptions, interpretations, limiting beliefs, have a mission. And their mission is very clear. If you remember from our conversations about imposter syndrome or the gremlin voice in your head, the gremlin voice throws these things in the road for the same reason, which is they want to convince you to play it safe, to play it small. Right? They put these thoughts in our head so that we don't take risks. So And that's their job. The gremlin voice in your head, the imposter voice, its job is to make you question yourself, to question your skills, to question if you're likable. What's your place in the world? Who do you think you are? And it does that so that you keep making choices that keep you playing in a little safe box so that you never get hurt, you never get worried or anxious or angry or any negative, uncomfortable emotion. That's the job of the gremlin, and that's the job of the ails. The ails are the tools that your imposter voice uses, your gremlin uses, to trip you up. Now here's the deal. We know if you are a woman who wants to go somewhere, who has a vision for her life and her lifestyle and what she wants it to be, and you're not quite there yet today, then staying in your comfort zone is not for you. It's not going to work. It's not going to get you where you want to go and where you need to go. It can't, because if you stay in your comfort zone, it means you stay exactly where you are right now, today. Now, if that's what you want, and that's good enough for you, then one, you're in the wrong training. So you're welcome to stick around, but you don't have to. And two, you're in the wrong group, because this Facebook group that we're part of is called Accelerating Leadership for Professional Women. Accelerating being the key word. We're moving forward and we're trying to move fast. And the coaching business that I own is called Dirty Girls Consulting, and it is all about growth through the dirt, through the mud, growing through the hard stuff that life throws at us and taking on those challenges and creating the life we love anyway. It is all about naming and going after the big, hairy, audacious goals and that vision that we have for ourselves. It is not about running in place. That is what treadmills are for. and I don't even own a treadmill. So because we have limited time on Training Tuesdays, I'm going to give you the flyby overview of the ails, what they are, and what we're going to do about it. Okay. When I work with clients in group or one-on-one, we go way more in depth with these pieces because these are truly at the center of what holds us back. These are the patterns and behaviors in our mind that hold us back. As long as we believe the stories, as long as we believe in the assumptions, the interpretations, the limiting beliefs that our mind keeps throwing forward, we will always play small. We will not, it will stop us. Those voices, those stories will stop us from holding our boundaries. They will stop us from using our voice. It will stop us from taking risks, from stretching ourselves further and going after the things we want. And if we don't move forward, then the life and the lifestyle and the leader who we want to be, the wise woman that we want to be, right, based on the purpose exercise we did last week, doesn't happen. So that's how big the ails are. Like, they block everything. They block everything. So let's get down into the ails. And hey, Joyce has joined us. Hi, Joyce. Nice to see you. All right. A in ails is for assumptions. Assumptions come from a perspective that says it happened before, therefore it will happen again. Assumptions are rooted in past experience and in personal experience. It's happened to me before, therefore it will happen again. So an example of an assumption, years and years ago, when I first got out of college, had a job at a startup, and I worked for a boss who was an incredible micromanager. Like, he was always like looking over my shoulder, looking over my work, making really minor tweaks to my work and pushing it back at me. And it was kind of a drudge and a grind. And I learned to not love micromanagers because I had no autonomy. I had no freedom to do my job the way I thought it should be done. I didn't have a voice in how things could be done. Now, granted, I was fresh out of school. I didn't know anything. But still, even when you're young and you don't know anything, you have ideas, you have intelligence, like you got this far. So anyway, I had this boss. He was a super micromanager. It was not a great experience. That was one of my first jobs out of college. Now, fast forward almost 10 years. About 10 years. Fast forward about 10 years. So now I'm 10 years into my career. And I'm at this startup. And one of the things I'm responsible for at this startup, and if you're not in marketing and this is Greek to you, I apologize, but if you know anything about marketing, you might understand why this was a thing. It was the start of digital marketing and Google AdWords, right? And the whole thing with Google AdWords was that you bought a few keywords and you paid for them to be rotated around the Googleverse. And when people searched on that keyword, your ad would pop up. Now, back in the day, when Google introduced this as a thing, and it was a very cool, Greek. Okay, Katerina understands my Greek. I consider these to be trauma? I just interrupted my story, Katerina, because I saw your comments. No. They could be. Certainly some experiences could be trauma. Absolutely, some of the patterns could be trauma. They don't have to be. Sometimes it's just life experience, and along with that life experience, we just carry it with us. It's a very common human behavior. It happened to me before. It's probably going to happen again. It doesn't have to be trauma. It is, however, a closed mindset instead of an open mindset or a growth mindset. It could be trauma, but it doesn't have to be trauma. So, all right. So in my story, back to my story, Google AdWords. I was responsible for setting up the AdWords and managing the campaigns, which means picking the words which we think people are going to search for us on, writing and creating the ads that will then pop up when people do search for the words, and it was a very labor-intensive process. I spent 3 to 4 hours a day, probably 2 to 3 days a week, so a couple mornings a week. I dedicated my entire morning reviewing my ads, reviewing the keywords, how did they perform. Now today, this is all very automated and it happens very fast. Back in the day, it was not so automated. You didn't have all the reports and the analyses you have today, so it was manual. I had to go in and really look at it and measure and think it through and all of this. My boss at this startup would stand right behind my chair and watch what I was doing on those mornings. And then he'd be asking me a whole bunch of questions. What are you doing? Why are you doing that? What if you did this? Have you thought about this? But like every day, and like for an hour or more, he would stand there in my 2 to 3 hour process, like doing the thing and asking questions and poking and prodding. And my assumption was, I really did think, I was like, he doesn't trust me. My last boss, who did this sort of behavior, didn't trust me, was a jerk and a micromanager. I don't love this. He doesn't trust me to do the job. He's inspecting, he's over-inspecting, he's micromanaging. This feels really bad. That was my assumption because a past experience kind of mirrored this one, right? I'm at a startup, I got a boss, he's standing over my shoulder, he's asking me questions and seems to be telling me what to do. And it didn't feel good, but now I'm 10 years older, so I have a little more confidence. And so finally, I turn to him and say, Austin, why are you here? Like, what are we doing that you come stand over my shoulder for a couple hours every morning? Like, you hired me. I'd love for you to trust me to do the job. Why this? Because this was the only part of my job that he stood over me on too. This was the only part. So when I said to him, it feels like you don't trust me, I'm unclear why we have this level of inspection. He's Christine, manually. I am old. I am old. Thank you very much. Woman of my same age. And yes, manually. But when I said that to him, he visibly took a step back and he said, what? No, I trust you. He's like, I don't know how to do this. You're teaching me. So what he started to explain was he was very fascinated by this whole world of Google AdWords and search engine optimization and search engine marketing and keyword searches. And he was trying to learn how it worked because, again, we were a small startup. We were like 9 people. We're a small startup. He's just trying to figure out how it works because he's investing money in this and he's not sure what it does. So he was literally using this as a tutorial. He saw me as a tutor and a guide, and I saw it as he's trying to micromanage me. He didn't know any more than me. He was like, my questions weren't to tell you what to do. It was to ask you, like, how are you thinking this through and why this is? But I was interpreted as his like indirect passive aggressive way of telling me what to do. So can you see how we were at odds? And it was all due to the fact that I was assuming his intent because of the last boss. I was assuming his intention was to micromanage me. Now here's what happens. When we're lost in a story like that in our head, we think something's happening because it happened before. So now I've got this whole story in my head and I'm upset and I'm angry and I'm frustrated. Statistically, on average, North America, we spend 2.5 hours a day in mental drama loops at work. 2.5 hours a day. 12.5 hours a week, 50 hours a month, 600 hours a year in our head, replaying these stories, generating this negative energy, these emotions over things that we're just assuming to be true. That's how much time we're wasting. Think about what you could be doing with an extra 2.5 hours a day. To me would be amazing, right? But an extra 50 hours a month to, I don't know, do something more productive, do something that makes you happy even, right? There's so much more we could do. It is very common for our minds to immediately go to these assumptions of past experiences because that's what we know, right? That's the pattern we were raised with. That's the story that we brought with us that we lived. So it's very common. But what ends up happening is it ends up working against us. One of the most common patterns, one of the most common assumptions that we as women make in the workplace is that our male peers do not value us or do not respect us because, and we're making the assumption because they interrupted us in a meeting, they ignored a suggestion we had, like whatever the situation is, we immediately go to, they don't respect me, they don't value me. And then we've built a whole assumption around that colors, it changes the way we interact with them and it changes the way we interact at work. We start creating our own exclusion. So I want you to think of some common assumptions that you've had. An assumption that you've had about yourself, about somebody else, about a certain situation based on this happened before. This happened before, therefore. What is an assumption you might be carrying with you today based on it happened before? A friend of mine, 3 or 4 weeks ago, I'm talking to a friend on the phone, and we're talking about a company that she currently works at. And she's moving to a different company. So we're talking about her job transition, new job. It's all very exciting. But I had said to her, she had said she didn't like the CEO. And I had said to her, what don't you like about the CEO? And she said, he comes from that company. I had a boss from that company once. They're all like this. That's an assumption. So she didn't not like the CEO because she had a direct experience that said, hey, he doesn't understand the business, or he's making bad decisions, or he's not really all about the people. She didn't like him based on the assumption that he was just like the other boss she had who was also from that same company. We make assumptions in our personal, right? Our personal choices, right? Diets don't work for me. I tried it before. I've tried every diet in the world. Dieting just doesn't work for me. You tried those particular diets at that particular past time in your life, and yet you're making the assumption that it won't work for you today, even though today you're a different person in a different time of your life, maybe even doing a different diet and a different thing. So it's not even related to the last diet, but we make the assumption. I applied for the job last year. I didn't get it. I'm not even going to bother applying. They're not going to give it to me. They didn't last year, so of course they won't this year. Yeah, Katerina, when you think about it, we start realizing, wow, we have a lot of thoughts that we automatically go to that are assumptions based on past experiences. So breaking this mindset shift is one that requires us to really pay attention, especially when it's negative thoughts that come up, because these are where the negative thoughts come from that keep us playing small. All right, so that's assumptions. Interpretations are a slightly different negative thought that pops in. Interpretations, if assumptions are based on a past experience, interpretations are things we believe are true, but it's fill in the blanks with incomplete information. We don't have the full story, so we make up the rest of the story, and then we believe that is the true story. So think about the last time you applied for a job and you didn't get it. You didn't get the job, which sucks, by the way. I'm sorry, but you didn't get the job. You didn't get the job. And the feedback you got from the recruiter or HR, whoever called you, was, hey, you were great. We just went in a different direction. World's most useless feedback, right? It tells you nothing. All you know, the only fact you know is you didn't get the job. But you can't help thinking about it. And of course you can't, because you're human, and that's normal. But what do we humans do when we don't have all the facts? We make up a story, right? We make up a story that says, well, I didn't get the job because you know what, that third person I interviewed with, that director, he didn't like me. He just instantly did not like me. He kept poking holes at me, and I bet he's the reason I didn't get the job. Or you might think, you know what, I didn't get this job because if you look at this company's history, if you look at their management page, it's all white men. They don't hire women in their professional management. They just hire men. I didn't get the job because of that. Where inevitably many of you go to, because I hear this a lot in my coaching, inevitably where many of you go to is, you know what, my experience just wasn't strong enough. My background wasn't what they were looking for, and my experience wasn't strong enough. I shouldn't have even applied for the job. I need to set my sights lower and apply for more reasonable positions next time. We have just limited ourselves. I will no longer apply for these jobs that fit the criteria of the kind of role and the kind of leader and the kind of life I want to have because they told me no. And since I don't know why they told me no, I'm assuming that I'm just not good enough. I'm going to apply for something less than. Yes, yes, Joyce, it is Mad Libs. We play Mad Libs all the time. With information we think we know. We think we know. But we're just pulling interpretations out of the air to make the story. The interpretation is the story we build And it might be a little mix. There might be a little assumption here. There might be just a little made up stuff here. There might be a rumor here and somebody else said something else and there's gossip there. It's all an interpretation for something you don't have complete information for. So, we use that interpretation to keep ourselves small. So when you think something like, they just don't respect me, that's why they interrupt me, is it? He left the meeting early, he just doesn't care about this project. Is that the only reason why he left the meeting early? The one that we do the most in our personal lives, the one that I hear the most, starts with the phrase, if he loved me, if she cared about me, then they would know, they would do, they would say. We interpret somebody else's action or lack of action immediately as, if they loved me, if they cared about me, this would not have happened, or that would have happened, but it didn't, so they must not love me. That's where we go with it. There could be a million reasons why they didn't do the thing we thought they were going to do, or that we wanted them to do, including maybe we didn't tell them, maybe we didn't say. Now, with my boss, Austin, who was standing behind me, the assumption I made was from a past life that because he was standing behind me because he was a micromanager, right? That's a past life assumption. If I had not had that experience, I could have interpreted Austin standing behind me and watching everything I was doing with Google Ads in a very different way, right? I could have said, he wants to add pressure to make sure I do a good job. He stands there because he wants to make me anxious and feel badly. He stands there, but like I can fill in the Mad Libs, as Joyce said, right? I can fill in a lot of blanks as to why he stood there. That didn't have to be, he's a micromanager. Had I thought it through, I could have come to the assumption he wants to learn what I'm doing. Go figure, right? So I want you to take a breath and think, what are some interpretations that you might be carrying around because you had an incomplete story and you're just filling in blanks with what you think makes the best story? And I want you to keep in mind with interpretations, our mind naturally goes to the most negative story we can find. That's where it goes. Our mind skews negative. It's a self-protection mechanism. It's natural. It requires us to have some self-awareness and some discipline to stop ourselves and go, oh, wait a minute. Is that really what's happening here? Did he really not call because he's not interested? Or did he not call because he had to work late? He had something else going on. His phone died, right? There are always other reasons when it comes to interpretations. Okay, as you think about incidents in the past that are coloring your assumptions you're making today, and gaps in the story that are creating interpretations that you're carrying with you today, the third AIL, A-I-L, assumption interpretation, limiting beliefs is the L in what ails you. Limiting beliefs are general ideas that we carry around, that we hold about the world, about people, about a situation, but they're limiting beliefs. They're ideas that actually block us from doing something more, bigger, broader, greater. Usually, a limiting belief is something that is handed to you, that you've adopted because it was given to you by your parents, by your culture, by an old boss, right? By a past experience. We inherit these beliefs somehow. And they do a big swath color of the world. Right? The whole world is now blue with a limiting belief. So, limiting beliefs in the world of ambitious women in the workplace come in a lot of places. But I think they're actually the most dangerous, right? They come in places where we think that our limiting belief is that women are too emotional to lead, or women aren't as strong leaders as men. Right? Limiting belief, I could never reach that high in this company because they don't have any C-level women, right? Limiting beliefs. But I think that they're most destructive when we carry them at a personal level. When we have limiting beliefs about who we are and what we can do, right? So limiting belief I've held for ages and I think you guys have heard me say this before, is that I'm bad at math. Because I failed a math test in the 11th grade. I failed a math test. My grade dropped to a C. Now, one failed test in the course of the year. My grade remained a C all year long. It didn't matter whether I made A's, B's, C's, D's, or F's on the tests. Mr. Dudley just gave me a C all year. And as he explained it to my parents, I didn't need to be an expert at math. I wasn't particularly good at it. I was just going to get married and have kids anyway. So what did I need? What were we in Algebra 2 for? It's literally what he said to my dad, and my father was not happy. That said, I carried a story with me. I carried a limiting belief with me that I am bad at math. I'm bad at math. Therefore, I have only done the bare minimum of math classes throughout my education. The bare minimum. Now, why is this a limiting belief? Because it turned out, as I got into grad school, as I got into, well, in college and in grad school, as I was doing my bare minimum of math classes, I had a job that required me to do math. My friend Christine, if you're still with us, Christine, we both had a job, that's where we met each other, where we had to do math. We had to do a lot of freaking fractions. We were picture framers, and we had to measure, and we had to do calculations, and we had to do width and depth and all the things with math. And it turned out I really enjoyed math. I liked figuring out formulas. I liked figuring out how things worked and put together and getting the formulas right. Frameworks, exactly. I actually enjoy math. And I started getting, I can't remember what I was doing next. I was doing something else years later after frameworks, but it required a different sort of math. And I started getting into that. And I realized I'm not bad at math. Actually, math is very logical. I'm quite good at math. I had a bad teacher one year that put me in this mindset rut from when I was 17, started to kind of come out of that rut in my early 20s, but didn't really, like well into my 30s and 40s, I still said I was bad at math. Until I finally had to deal with financial calculations at work, right? As I'm dealing with how is our business growing? How do I model the growth of this business? What are the levers I can pull? Suddenly I'm like, I'm actually not bad at math. I just always thought I was. Now, I want you to think about math as that limiting belief, because how different would my life and career be if I had believed I was good at math? If I had realized how much I enjoyed math and maybe I majored in it? Would I be an accountant? Would I be a chief financial officer? Would I be an investment banker? I don't know. Maybe, maybe not. But I don't know, because I carried this limiting belief with me that stopped me from pursuing anything that had to do with math. I didn't pursue anything in the math in STEM because there was a math component involved, and I was like, nope, no way. Send me to literature class. I know how to read. Limiting belief. I had a limiting belief up until 3 years ago, maybe 4 years ago, that professional women of a certain age and a certain standing, when they did their nail, one, had to do their nails, and two, when you did your nails, you were best suited to do your nails in red, maybe pinks, pale pinks, thank you, or French manicure. Why? I had this limiting belief that that's how professional polished women show up. Red, French manicure, maybe some pale pinks, some nudes, right? And then one day I walked into the nail salon. Again, this is like only maybe 4 years ago. So I think I was probably around 50 when this happened. And I saw on the nail thing, like this really bright, sparkly blue nail color. And I was like, oh, I want that. And I carried so much judgment on myself for wanting bright blue nails. But there's this other side of me. My kids call it a hippie, but my kids aren't old enough to know what a real hippie is. So I'm just going to say more bohemian. There's a side of me, freedom is one of my highest values. Adventure, exploring, spontaneity, things that sparkle and make noise. I love those things. I love those things. And those things love blue nails. I don't have blue nails today. I was going to paint them and I ran out of time, so I apologize. Astrology, tarot cards, like stuff on the fringy edge of crunchy granola. That is 100% me, as is the professional woman who believes in red nails and whatnot. So I did do the blue nails, and only for 4 or 5 years now, have I been free of the limiting belief that I could be professional and still have blue fingernails? Which sounds ridiculous, but this is how we apply limiting beliefs, right? Beliefs that we just, all professional women should have red nails, right? All women leaders cannot show emotion at work. There are lots of limiting beliefs that we hold, that we just, what do they call it? Peanut butter it on everything, right? Leaders don't get emotional. It's unprofessional in the work environment. That's not true. Throwing a temper tantrum is kind of unprofessional. Being mean to your coworkers, unprofessional. Breaking down and crying, not super unprofessional, necessarily uncomfortable, but showing emotion, showing passion, interest, enthusiasm for your project, for something you're working on, for something that's not unprofessional. It's just emotion. But that's a limiting belief that we put out there because other people get uncomfortable, right? Leaders are born with the leadership quality. Maybe some of them are, but not everybody. Some people are lucky. They're just born lucky. Certainly luckier than me, right? Limiting beliefs. What limiting belief that you have about an entire situation, an entire group, or even about yourself that you're carrying that is holding you back? Yep, calculus. See, Christine, I've never taken calculus. Big no-go for me too. Never taken calculus. I don't even know if I'd be good at calculus or not. That's the thing. So I totally get exactly where you're coming from there. All right, so what do we do about the ails? How do we navigate the ails? This is the subject of a lot of coaching conversations. I'm going to give you the 3 simple tools that you need to use to start raising your awareness around these things when they're holding you back, and start working your way towards making much more forward-moving, powerful, positive decisions for yourself, choices for yourself. And that is by changing the mindset. So the first thing you're going to do is you are going to identify the source. Identify the source. So I just gave you kind of the 3 tips around assumption. It happened to me before, it'll happen again. Interpretation. I don't have enough data, I'm filling in the blanks. Limited belief. My father believed women made great truck drivers, therefore all women, I think, make great truck drivers too. That's actually not quite, well, it's kind of a limiting belief. You get the idea, right? My boss says that at all Fortune 500 companies, they don't hire women into the CEO position, therefore I'm not even going to apply. It limits me. I'm not even going to apply that path because I could never become a Fortune 500 CEO. It just doesn't happen for women like me. Limiting belief. Identify which one it is. Identify which one. Once you know which one it is, it becomes a little bit easier to do step 2, which is play devil's advocate. You've got to ask yourself the questions. Is this true? And if you don't know for sure if it's true, like in the job example, the only thing you know is you didn't get the job. It's the only truth you know. Everything else around it is a story you are making up to try to make yourself more comfortable. So if the story you're going to tell yourself is, I wasn't good enough, I need to aim smaller, then you need to think of 5 other stories of why you didn't get the job. I didn't get the job because they had an inside candidate that had the inside track the whole time. I didn't get the job because maybe there was some nepotism and one of the C-level's nieces or daughters or cousins needed a job and they got the job instead. I didn't get the job because they wanted someone with more experience in this particular area and my expertise is in this particular area. I didn't get the job because the salary that I deserve is out of their pay range. When you don't have information, your mind will go to making up the most negative story. You consciously, with awareness, need to start looking at what are all the other stories, because the conclusion you're going to come to is, I don't actually know. I don't know why I didn't get the job. Now I can stop wasting my time and energy worrying about it. Because if I didn't get the job, then where's my energy going? It's going to the next opportunity. Now, play devil's advocate. He didn't call me because he didn't like me. I'm never going to see him again. Or maybe his phone died. Or maybe he had something else to do. Or maybe. Come up with at least 5 alternative assumptions, interpretations, thoughts that you can apply to the same situation. Because what you're doing with that exercise is you're broadening the scope. You're broadening the scope to say, oh, it's not just this one thing. It could have been these other things too. Those other alternatives may not make you feel better, but they're going to show you that there's so many more options, and they're going to reinforce you don't have the actual answer. All right. Now, once you've broadened your perspective a little bit, the third thing you're going to do, if you need to, you don't have to do this in all cases, look for the evidence. Oh, my kitty's joining us. Look for the evidence. If it's really important for you to know why I didn't get the job, and I've got 7 reasons why I may not have gotten a job, the only way you're going to know for sure is to call back that recruiter and say, hey, not for nothing, but some more detailed feedback would really help me out. I was thinking maybe this is why I didn't get the job. Could you fill me in? And if it's a good recruiter, they will give you some good feedback. They will help you fill in the blanks so you don't have to make interpretations anymore. And you can walk away saying, oh, you know what? It was my salary. Oh, you know what? It was that they wanted someone in the office every day, and I only wanted to be 3 days a week. So guess what? I'm glad I didn't get the job because 3 days a week is my limit. Like, that's my boundary. Seek evidence for proof, because once you have proof, then you have something tangible to work with. Then you have something to either go to somebody and say, hey, I have a question about this. If you have proof that every time you speak up in a meeting, Kevin interrupts you, undermines you, undercuts you, and you've documented, hey, he did it in this meeting, this meeting, this meeting, these are the things that happened. You go to HR and say, I have a problem. You go to Kevin and say, we have a problem. But you can only do something about it when you have the evidence. Now, like I said, you don't need evidence in every situation. In some situations, you stop at the devil's advocate and you're like, you know what? What's true doesn't even matter anymore. I'm moving on to something else, to something different. I can leave this in the past. It's you seek evidence when you really need to know, or when you feel like there really is a next action. Now, here's the thing. The ails. What ails you? Assumptions, interpretations, limiting beliefs. They are not just leadership killers. They are happiness killers. We are spending all that time in our head thinking and rethinking, playing and replaying scenes and ideas of things we don't know anything about. And we are making up the negative stories. We have the glasses with the dark filters on, and everything looks gray and dark. I would invite you to put on a different pair of glasses, preferably with a clear lens, where you start questioning, playing the devil's advocate and questioning, is it true? What are some alternatives? Seeking the evidence when you need the truth. And honestly, if you have to go in the other direction, wear the rose-colored glasses. Because if you go through life interpreting things more to the positive rather than the negative, you're going to behave. You're going to speak, you're going to think, you're going to act more in that positive event, and that's going to do more to open opportunities for you anyway than if you go with the negative. So take your pick, clear glasses or rose-colored glasses, but take the dark lenses off. Pay attention to when your mind is putting that negative thought in your head. And you're absolutely right, Katerina. That is exactly how we spiral. We get locked in a mind loop of drama and we spiral, and it leads to more negative, and that just spins out of control. Negative energy is heavier and more magnetic than positive energy, so it takes a lot more work to pull ourselves up and out of it. So much the better if we can nip that in the bud and go, oh, but you know what? Here are 5 other reasons why this could be. And when I look at that perspective, it could be anything. I can let this go. So this week, your practice is on mastering your mindset. And to do that, you need to slow down. You need to observe your thoughts. Pick out, ooh, that was an assumption. Oof, I'm making an interpretation. That limiting belief kicked in. Slow yourself down. See what you can notice and start just picking them apart. And it's an exercise for fun. It's practice. It's practice for you to really see what's going on and how your mind is working. The automatic patterns that your mind has established based on your life experience and history. It's eye-opening when you do this. It's liberating. It really is. It allows you to start letting go of old patterns much faster. and it helps you move forward. You move forward faster, you move forward towards the decisions, the choices, and the life and the lifestyle that you want. Okay, we have covered values, purpose, mindset. Those are the first three. For next week in our series, we're going to talk about voice. We're going to talk about using our voice. Because we don't use our voice, if we don't know our values and we don't have a clear sense of purpose and we aren't tackling the mindset gremlins, we don't use our voice. So I'm doing these in a deliberate order, by the way. And voice is the next one up. So this week, practice slowing down, stepping back, observing your thoughts and your words, seeing which ones are interpretations, assumptions, limiting beliefs, and for fun, just start picking them apart and see where you land. And then next week, we will talk about your voice. Ladies, thank you so much for joining me tonight. Did you lose sound? I did not lose sound. I hope not. I'm wrapping it up. Thank you so much for joining me tonight for Training Tuesday. I will see you next week, and have a fabulous week.